"Get out of my house." The voice echoed through the cold hallway. Eleanor stood near the grand staircase, her posture rigid, her eyes filled with contempt. Beside her, the old chandelier trembled in the draught. The man she faced was her younger brother Daniel. He held a small box in his hand, and his coat was still covered with paint stains. Their father had died a week ago. The will had been read that morning. Everything, including the family house and gallery, had been left to Eleanor. Daniel was left with nothing. He looked at his sister, his expression calm. "This house belonged to both of us." "Not anymore," she said without turning. "Father made his choice." Daniel nodded slowly. He did not argue. He walked past her toward the door. The floor creaked under his boots. Outside, the air was sharp and silent. A thin layer of snow covered the garden where their father once painted every morning. Daniel carried the box back to his small apartment near the edge of town. Inside were brushes, old sketches, and a single unfinished painting of a forest. He placed it by the window. The wind blew through the cracked glass, spreading dust across the floor. That night he sat alone in the dim light. His hands still smelled of turpentine. He opened an envelope inside the box. It was their father's handwriting. "My son, art is not for the world to understand but for you to keep alive." He closed the letter and looked out the window. Across the town, the gallery lights still glowed in the distance. His sister's name now replaced his father's on the signboard. Eleanor had always been the family pride. She studied in Europe, learned business, and came back to run the gallery. Daniel stayed home to paint. He painted faces of workers, fishermen, children playing by the river. The townspeople loved his work, but his family never cared. They called it sentimental, worthless, without value. After the funeral, Eleanor had decided to erase him completely. She hosted a new exhibition announcing the gallery's new direction. Minimalism, corporate art, investment pieces, nothing that spoke of life or struggle. His father's old works were moved to storage. Daniel's name was removed from the small corner wall where he once exhibited. He began teaching art classes at a community center. Children sat around him painting with cheap watercolors. He smiled at them the same way his father once smiled at him. At night, he cleaned tables at a cafe to pay rent. He never complained. He painted whenever he could on scraps of wood or paper thrown away. One winter morning, a student brought him a flyer. It was an announcement for the annual Ashford Art Competition. Winners' work would be displayed at the Bradwell Gallery. Eleanor's gallery. Daniel looked at the flyer for a long time. He folded it and placed it in his pocket. That night he began a new painting. He worked for weeks. He painted the town under snow. The old roofs, the smoke rising from chimneys. The children running with scarves flying behind them. He painted until dawn, his breath freezing in the air. When he finished, his hands trembled, but his eyes were steady. He submitted the work under a pseudonym. Weeks later, a letter arrived. "Congratulations, your work, Winter Street, has been selected for the finalist exhibition." He went to the opening night wearing his father's old coat. The hall was filled with people in suits, glasses clinking, music low and distant. On the far wall he saw his painting. Eleanor stood beside it, smiling at the crowd. "This piece perfectly captures the soul of our town," she said. The audience applauded. Daniel watched quietly from the edge of the room. When she moved closer to the label, her smile froze. The signature was his. Their eyes met across the room. The music faded into silence. For a moment no one spoke. Eleanor turned to the organizer. "This work cannot be part of the exhibition," she said. The crowd murmured, confused. "Why?" someone asked. "Because it is not original," she said. "It copies an earlier style my brother used years ago." Daniel stepped forward, his voice calm. "That brother is me." Gasps rippled through the hall. Eleanor's face turned pale. He stood beside the painting. "Father painted for truth," he said. "You turned it into a business. Now you can decide which of us still understands art." The organizer hesitated, then turned to Daniel. "Sir, your work speaks for itself. The award stays." The applause came slow, then grew louder. Eleanor's hands shook. She forced a smile, but her eyes were cold. She left before the ceremony ended. Weeks passed. Daniel's name began to appear in local papers. A journalist wrote about the forgotten artist from a small town. Collectors reached out. His paintings sold quietly one after another. He used the money to buy new brushes and paint, nothing more. One afternoon he received a letter. It was from Eleanor. "Meet me at the gallery tonight." He arrived after closing hours. The lights were dim. She sat in their father's old chair behind the desk. "You embarrass me," she said. "No," he replied, "I reminded you who we are." She looked around the empty hall. The paintings seemed to watch her. "Father always believed you were weak," she said, "too emotional, too attached." "He was wrong," Daniel said softly, "he just forgot how to feel." She rose from the chair and walked toward him. "You think you have won. I think I have nothing left to lose." She stared at him but said nothing more. He left the gallery quietly, his reflection fading in the glass door. Months later, the Bradwell Gallery announced bankruptcy. Rumors spread that Eleanor had lost major investors. After a scandal involving forged certificates, Daniel never spoke of it. He kept teaching children and painting by the river. His work became part of the town's life again. One spring morning, a truck stopped in front of his small studio. Workers carried in several wooden crates. Inside were his father's old paintings. A note lay on top, signed by Eleanor. "They belong with you." He placed the paintings along the wall one by one. Light from the window fell over the colors. He touched the edges gently, as if greeting old friends. Years passed quietly. Eleanor left town. No one knew where she went. The gallery building was later turned into a public arts center for children. A plaque near the entrance carried both their names. Donated by Daniel and Eleanor Bradwell. On opening day, Daniel stood by the doorway watching the children paint. A little girl held up her drawing. It was of the same forest from his father's unfinished work. The same light filtering through the trees. Daniel smiled. The town had changed. But the color, the breath of art still moved like wine through the branches. Outside, the sky cleared after rain. The streets shone with quiet brightness. He walked home, his hands still smelling faintly of paint. That night he opened his window. The air was cool. From the hill he could see the lights of the new art center. He picked up a brush, dipped it into blue, and began another painting. The strokes steady and simple, like the rhythm of a heart that had learned peace. The snow, the gallery, the silence, all belonged to the past. What remained was the quiet persistence of creation. The simple act of continuing. That was his final inheritance. And his quiet victory.